I'm Mark, 35, and for years I genuinely believed I was just a dad trying to co-parent, navigating the messy aftermath of a divorce. I thought the drama was about blended family dynamics, not a calculated ambush. But that lie shattered one Tuesday afternoon. I walked into what I thought was a routine school meeting, coffee in hand, only to find Britney, Derek, and the school counselor waiting, their faces grim. That's when Britney, with a fake tear, accused me of emotional neglect and threatened to seek primary custody because I wouldn't pay for her stepdaughter's summer camp. How could I have been so blind? In a flash, I saw it all. The blended family charade was a weapon, their concern for the kids a financial leverage, and their goal wasn't co-parenting, but control. Britney, still sipping her coffee, completely oblivious to the legal storm I was about to unleash, thought she had won. Before I do, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story earns it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I like knowing who's out there. I'm their father, not your ATM. At 27, everything felt under control. My career was on track. I stayed active at the gym, and weekends were reserved for quality time with a tight-knit group of friends. Life was steady until one unexpected afternoon at a backyard cookout turned it all upside down. That's when I first saw Britney. She stood on the far side of the yard, her laughter effortless, like something out of an ad. I made some dumb crack about overcooked burgers, not expecting much, but she laughed anyway, and just like that, I was done for. In just 8 months, we tied the knot. Was it rushed? Absolutely. But at the time, it felt like we were being carried by something unstoppable. The beginning wasn't perfect, yet far from terrible. Then came the news she was expecting. When our son Declan was born, it felt like hitting the jackpot. The moment I held him, small, soft, and somehow already known to me, I thought, so, this is what meaning feels like. I dove head first into being a dad. After long hours at work, I'd come home and take over so she could get some sleep. One night, I spent what felt like forever walking laps around the living room, humming made-up lullabies to soothe Declan. When he finally passed out on my chest, I didn't move an inch, just stood there, afraid to break the spell. In that moment, the rest of the world disappeared. But over time, something in Britney shifted. She grew distant, sharp with her words, emotionally out of reach. I'd walk through the door after exhausting shifts, and she wouldn't even look my way. "These aren't folded right," she'd mutter. "He's been crying non-stop, and now you decide to be here." Even so, I didn't stop putting in the effort. I made her breakfast, organized nights out, tried to hold the pieces in place, but she kept pulling away. One evening, I went all out, booked a table at the restaurant where we had our first date, arranged a sitter, even picked up that necklace she'd once pointed out. Her reaction, just a tired sigh. "Can't we just stay in and order something?" Dinner was a bust. She was glued to her phone, barely acknowledged the gift. The silence on the drive home was louder than any fight we'd ever had. I didn't know if we were hitting a rough patch or already over. Then came pregnancy number 2. Declan had just turned 1. That's when things really unraveled. Her phone became her lifeline. She hit it constantly, flipped it over the second I walked in. When I asked who she was texting, she got defensive. "What? I'm not allowed to have friends now." I knew something was off. One night, I got up to check on Declan and saw the glow of her phone at 2 a.m. After that, I started noticing patterns, taking her phone everywhere, stepping outside mid-meal, scrolling endlessly in silence. After Zara was born, I saw a message pop up while she was showering. "Some guy from work. Miss talking to you, too." That was all the confirmation I needed. I didn't confront her then, just watched as she grew more detached, always half present. Eventually, I had to say something. "We don't even talk anymore," I told her. "We're just coexisting." Her reply: "Sorry, I'm not Ms. Cheerful after pushing out 2 of your kids." This isn't about fake smiles, I said. It's about respect, she fired back. Well, maybe you should have thought of that before knocking me up again. I reminded her, Zara was a joint decision. She rolled her eyes and walked away. That was it for me. I stopped hoping for change, focused on the kids, did my part, but the partnership was gone. She was just someone who lived in the same house. 4 months later, I came home to divorce papers on the kitchen table. No warning, no talk, just a signature and a goodbye. I deserve better, she said. You've been cold and distant. I wanted to scream to show her all the ignored messages, the effort, the nights I stayed up while she claimed exhaustion. But I looked at our kids, Declan stacking blocks, Zara sleeping, and bit my tongue. They didn't need the fallout. That moment burned into me. I stood in the quiet house, papers in hand, feeling the weight of an ending I didn't want, but saw coming. I asked her straight up, is it Jason? She didn't even flinch. This isn't about anyone else. We're just not working. No denial, which told me everything. We split things evenly. Assets, custody, no child support. We both worked and agreed to keep it fair. But signing those papers felt like giving away a piece of myself I'd never get back. The move out hit hardest. I found a small apartment nearby and the first night there alone was brutal. The place was nearly empty, just a mattress and an old TV sitting on a plastic crate. The kids were across town asleep, and I sat scrolling through their photos until my phone died. Then I sat there in darkness wondering how my whole life fell apart so fast. Those early single dad days, pure chaos. I'd be so excited to see the kids, only to feel instantly overwhelmed managing a baby and a toddler solo. The first time Zara got a fever, I freaked and called my mom at 2 a.m. She talked me down and assured me it was normal. I stayed up all night watching Zara breathe. By morning, she was fine, and I knew I could handle it. At first, swapping the kids between homes was uncomfortable. We met in a Starbucks parking lot, barely making eye contact as we handed off car seats and diaper bags. Declan would sometimes cry when I left him. It broke me. Zara was still too young to understand. But Declan clearly knew things weren't right. Why don't you live with us anymore, Daddy? He asked one day, completely serious. How do you explain a broken marriage to a 2-year-old? Mommy and Daddy still love you a lot, but we realized we are better at being parents when we live in different homes. He thought about it for a second. Can I have 2 bedrooms now? Kids are unreal. Tougher than they get credit for. About a year after everything was finalized, Britney started dating this guy named Derek. She didn't end up with Jason, which pretty much confirmed everything I suspected about that situation. Derek strutted around like he invented fatherhood. He called himself a part-time marketing consultant, which meant he worked maybe 20 hours a week while Britney handled most of the bills. They got married when Declan was 4 and Zara was just 2. Out of nowhere, my kids had a stepsister, Lyra, same age as Declan. And later, Britney and Derek had a son named Nathan, who's now 7. I first crossed paths with Derek at a preschool drop-off. I was helping Declan hang up his backpack when this dude strolls up in an Ed Hardy shirt. Yes, in 2016. And Britney at his side. Oh, you must be the ex, he said with a smirk, reaching out to shake my hand. I'm Derek. Heard a lot about you. I gave him a quick handshake. Can't say the same. He chuckled way too hard. Well, the kids are great. Declan's been teaching Lyra how to build with Legos. They're like best buddies. The way he said it, like he already claimed Declan as his own, made my jaw tighten. But I kept my cool for my son's sake. That's good. Declan's always been generous, I said, patting his head. I'll never forget the first time I dropped the kids off at their house after the wedding. Britney had this handmade sign on the front door that read the Johnson-Ellis blended family. Everyone's names in painted letters. Mine was nowhere to be seen. Even though it's my last name, too. I didn't say a word. Not worth it. What really got me was when Declan casually brought up Daddy Derek at dinner. "Daddy Derek's going to teach me how to ride a bike," he said mid-slice of pizza. I nearly choked. "Who's Daddy Derek?" "Mom's husband," he answered like it was the most obvious thing. "She said I can call him that since he's kind of like my other dad now." I had to step outside for a moment to breathe. When I returned, I kept my voice calm. "Hey bud, you know I'm your dad, right? Maybe it'd be easier if you just called him Derek." He just shrugged. "Mom says I have to call him Daddy Derek to be polite." That night, I texted Britney. "Can we talk about Declan calling Derek Daddy? I'm not okay with it." An hour later, she replied, "It was Declan's choice. Don't turn this into a thing." I knew that was a lie, but what could I do? Telling my son what to call someone would only confuse him more. So, once again, I bit my tongue. Meanwhile, I was working my tail off to give my kids a steady home. I got 2 promotions, saved like crazy, and eventually bought a small but solid house in a great school district. My life became centered around giving Declan and Zara everything I possibly could. Derek, man, this guy really had the nerve to throw snide little comments every time we ended up at the same school event. One time during parent-teacher night, I was standing by the science fair display. Declan had made this awesome robotic arm that could actually grab marbles. Derek came over and posted up right next to me. "Hey, how's the new ride? Must be nice not having to worry about extra mouths to feed when you're only looking after 2, he said with a smug little grin. Never mind that I was driving a 5-year-old used Honda. "But sure, man. It runs," I said flatly, keeping things civil. He gave a self-satisfied smirk and added, "Some of us know what sacrifice looks like in a big blended family," flashing a watch that probably cost more than I made in a month. I didn't say anything. I just walked away. Stuff like this happened often, but I held my tongue for the kids. There was this one field trip I signed up to chaperone. So did he. 6 hours of listening to him brag about their upcoming Hawaii vacation, the expensive gaming system he bought all the kids, and how tough yet rewarding it is raising 4 children. He kept calling Declan and Zara our kids when chatting with other parents. I clenched my jaw every time. At lunch, he sat across from me while the kids ran off to the playground. "You know," he said, peeling open his overpriced organic sandwich. "This back and forth thing is tough on the kids. Britney and I were thinking it might be healthier for them to have one steady home and just visit you on weekends." I nearly spit out my drink. "Come again." He lifted his hands. "Hey, no offense. Just talking about what's best for the kids. My parenting schedule isn't up for negotiation, especially not with you," I said firmly, keeping my voice low so the kids wouldn't hear. He gave a casual shrug. "Just thought you'd want to know. Britney says you've always put the kids first." I wanted to flip the whole table. Instead, I got up and went to hang with my kids who were cracking up on the jungle gym. Not exactly looking distressed. Things really started boiling over when Britney expected me to act like I was responsible for all her children. It began subtly, like asking me to bring a birthday gift for Derek's daughter when I came to pick up Declan and Zara. "Don't you think it's mean to walk in with presents for just 2 kids while Lyra stands there empty-handed?" She'd ask like I was the Grinch. Then it turned into her hinting that I should include LRA on weekend outings with my kids. "It's confusing when you only take 2 of them," she insisted. "They're siblings now." I tried to handle it calmly. "I'm glad they're close, but I have limited time with Declan and Zara. I want to give them my full attention." That didn't go over well. "Wow, way to make a child feel left out. Real mature," she snapped. The guilt trips were non-stop. I stayed firm, but somehow I always ended up the bad guy. Meanwhile, every time I picked up the kids, they were raving about how Dad Derek took them to Disney or on ski trips with their real family. One drive home, Declan was unusually quiet. When I asked him what was wrong, he finally spoke up. "Mom and Derek were talking about you last night." They didn't know I was listening. My stomach dropped. "What did they say, buddy?" He stared out the window. "Derek said you don't care about the whole family. Just about being the fun parent." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers went numb. "That's not true, Declan. I love you and Zara more than anything." "I know," he said quietly. "I told Mom that was mean. She told me not to repeat private stuff. I had to pull the car over." I was shaking. I turned around to face him, took a breath, and said, "Dean, you should never feel stuck between us. If anything ever bothers you, you can always talk to me. No secrets." He nodded and I could see the tension lift off his shoulders. The constant digs about me not being part of their real family were infuriating, but I never brought it up to the kids. They didn't need that kind of drama. As they grew older, Britney's financial demands only got more ridiculous. When Declan and Zara were 7 and 5, they both started showing incredible academic promise. I found a fantastic esteem-based private school called Westridge Academy. It wasn't cheap. $12,000 per year per child. But the education was worth it. I offered to pay their full tuition, no strings attached. But instead of being thrilled, Britney made it about Lyra. She said it would be unfair if Lyra couldn't attend, too, and accused me of being divisive. Then she actually suggested I pay for all 3 kids. I stood my ground. I said I'd cover Declan and Zara's costs, and anything beyond that was their responsibility. She was furious. But in the end, they enrolled Lyra anyway with help from Derek's parents. This kind of thing happened over and over. Every cost, every gift, every opportunity one gave my kids became a tug-of-war where I was expected to fork over more for her new family. Then last spring, I hit my breaking point. Declan and Zara, absolute geniuses, by the way, got accepted into Tech Future, a top-tier summer tech program in Colorado. Only 40 kids in the country made it. 40, and 2 of them were mine. Declan, a little coding wizard, was building Minecraft mods before he turned 10. Zara, she built a robot that could sort garbage and took first place at the state robotics meet. I was so incredibly proud, I thought I'd explode. They worked non-stop, writing essays, making videos, building prototypes to get in. I still remember application night. We were all at my kitchen table. Declan was triple-checking spelling, and Zara was bouncing around uploading footage of her robot. "What if we don't get picked?" "Dad," Declan asked, hovering over the submit button. "Then we try again next year," I said. "But I think you've got this." When the acceptance emails came a month later, we were at my place. I let them check the inbox after dinner. The way they screamed when they saw congratulations could have broken windows. Zara danced on the couch. Declan reread the email 5 times like he couldn't believe it. To celebrate, I took the kids out for ice cream and promised I'd get them new laptops for camp. They lit up with excitement. It was one of those moments that makes all the late nights and missed luxuries worth it. Camp wasn't cheap, $7,800 each, plus airfare and equipment. Altogether, close to $120. But I didn't hesitate. I'd been budgeting for opportunities like this since the divorce. Driving a clunker, renting a smaller place, skipping out on trips, all so they could have something amazing. During our regular co-parenting sit-down, I brought it up to Britney. Her response instantly made my stomach tighten. "No, I'm proud of them." No celebration, just this cold, calculating glint in her eye. "You know, Lyra has been showing interest in robotics, too," she said, completely sidestepping what our kids had accomplished. I nodded slowly, already dreading what was coming. Wouldn't it be great if all 3 of them got to go? she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I took a long drink of my coffee and replied, Britney, this isn't a group outing. Declan and Zara earned their spots in a program they worked hard to qualify for. She leaned in like she was about to deliver a big secret. There's got to be a way Lyra can attend, too. And since you're already footing the bill for your two, it makes sense for you to cover hers as well. At first, I chuckled, thinking she was messing with me. Nope, dead serious. You're asking me to pay $8,000 for your stepdaughter to tag along to a camp she wasn't even accepted into. They're all siblings, she argued. You're creating unnecessary division. What's divisive, I told her, is pretending everyone gets the same reward without putting in the effort, she glared. So, their relationship with their sister means nothing to you? You're causing resentment? I kept my voice steady. If anyone's building resentment, it's you. By trying to take away something they've earned, she stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. Don't be surprised if the kids decide they'd rather not go if Lyra can't. You're really going to guilt-trip our children to make a point. She flashed a fake smile. Just saying. Families should support each other. Maybe you forgot how that works. I left that coffee shop shaking, not from fear, but from trying not to flip the table. The sheer audacity was unreal. The next day, Declan called. He sounded torn. Apparently, Britney told him maybe he and Zara shouldn't attend if LRA couldn't go, too. Typical emotional blackmail. I told him that they'd earned this opportunity and it was okay to enjoy it. He needed that reassurance. After the call, I texted Britney asking her to stop playing mind games. She replied with a thumbs down emoji. Pure class. But of course, that wasn't the end of it. Britney never lets a guilt trip die quietly. 2 days later, I was at work wrapping up a huge presentation when a message from Derek popped up. We need to discuss your role in supporting our household. I nearly spit my coffee. Seriously? I ignored it, assuming it was just more nonsense. But that Friday, when I came to pick up the kids, Britney handed me a printed spreadsheet and a typed note like we were doing business in the Stone Age. While the kids grabbed their stuff, I skimmed the page. It laid out half their $2,400 rent. The claim. My neighborhood was too upscale and it was emotionally disruptive for Declan and Zara. Therefore, I should chip in to balance things out. I calmly reminded her that their housing, their bills, their choices, none of that was my responsibility. She argued back that it was about what's best for the children, as if I hadn't already given up countless comforts for their sake. Then Derek strolled in like her backup singer and said, a real man would take care of the entire household. That was the breaking point. He had the gall to lecture me about masculinity while asking for money. I don't get violent, but at that moment, I understood how someone could. You know what a real man does, Derek? I said, stepping closer. He pays his own bills instead of asking his wife's ex to cover them. His face turned red. Careful. The kids are nearby. Then maybe don't start crap during pickup. I snapped. And by the way, a real man doesn't drag kids into his money grabs. Britney jumped in. This isn't some shakedown. It's called co-parenting. But you clearly only care about yourself. I couldn't help but laugh. You think co-parenting means I pay your rent? No. It means I provide for my kids, Declan and Zara. Not Derek's child. Not your baby, mine. I called the kids over and we left. As I pulled out of their driveway, I saw Britney and Derek standing in the doorway, looking annoyed that their little setup didn't work. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. You okay, Dad? Zara asked from the back seat. I forced a smile. Yeah, sweetheart. Just trying to pick a good movie for tonight. Later, with the kids asleep, I sat out on the back porch with a cold beer, my mind racing. I ended up calling Phil, my best friend, who went through something similar. Tell me the truth, I said. Am I the jerk here? Should I be covering their expenses, too? Nope, he replied without pause. You take care of your kids, school, doctor's visits, the essentials. That's on you, their rent. Their problem. But what if my kids feel the difference between the homes? I asked. Are they hungry? Do they have clothes and a warm bed? Yeah, always. Then they're fine, he added. Kids don't care how many square feet your house has. They care about feeling loved. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking otherwise. And he was right. Deep down, I knew he was. Still, the constant emotional pressure was exhausting. It made me second-guess myself. Was I being cold? Was I really hurting my kids by refusing to buy into the perfect blended family charade? I barely slept that night. But eventually, I reminded myself, setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad father. It makes me a responsible one. I had no idea that whole rent stunt was just the opening act for what was coming. A week later, I walked into what I thought would be a standard meeting with the school staff, coffee in hand, expecting an update on how my kids were doing academically. Instead, I stepped into what felt like a setup. Sitting there already were Britney, Derek, and the school counselor, all with grim expressions. Turns out Britney had turned the meeting into a surprise intervention. She started laying into me, claiming that my uneven parenting was taking an emotional toll on the kids because I only took Declan and Zara on trips. Didn't include Lyra and lived in a more comfortable neighborhood. Basically, I was being accused of refusing to play along with their fantasy of a picture-perfect blended household. Then Derek chimed in, holding up his phone and flipping through pictures from their recent vacation in San Diego. See how happy all 4 kids are, he said. But then when you only include Declan and Zara, it creates unnecessary division. My face burned. Every part of me wanted to get up and walk out, but I stayed seated. Britney followed up like she was performing in a courtroom drama complete with fake tears. Declan came home in tears because he felt bad Lyra couldn't join him at camp. Total nonsense. That kid had been bouncing around with excitement for weeks. Then Derek doubled down. Zara's been acting out. It's probably because she feels singled out compared to the others. This coming from a guy who probably couldn't even tell you what after-school club she was in. That's when I'd had enough. At my home, I said clearly. Zara has one sibling, her brother Declan. That's not confusing. That's the reality we agreed to in the divorce. Britney immediately fired back. You just refuse to accept the dynamic of our blended family. I reminded her, the arrangement is 2 separate homes. That's not my doing. That's what you chose. Then Derek leaned in with, you're just bitter because we offer them a real family, but it's not okay to punish the kids for your own insecurities. I stared right at him. A real family? You mean the one where you tell my son he's a burden? Or where you guilt-trip my daughter for succeeding? That's your version of complete? Britney gasped like I'd insulted her lineage. But I didn't let it spiral. Don't bother, I said calmly. I've seen the text. The kids have shared things, too. This has nothing to do with emotional well-being. It's about trying to control the story in my wallet. They stuck to their script, painting themselves as the martyrs and me as the cold outsider who refused to play along. When that tactic didn't work, Britney dropped the act. If you can't recognize how your behavior is impacting them emotionally, we may have to revisit custody, she said. We're prepared to seek primary custody due to emotional neglect. The room went dead silent. It felt like I'd been dunked in ice. They were threatening to take my children because I wouldn't foot the bill for Lyra's camp because I refused to cover their rent. I want to make one thing very clear, I said, voice steady, despite the anger surging in me. I've always been there for my kids, financially, emotionally, physically. I haven't missed a milestone. And if your case is built on the fact that I won't pay for someone else's child's summer camp, then I suggest you bring some actual proof to court. Britney smirked. We've got plenty of documentation showing how you failed to support a stable blended environment. Judges take that seriously. Something snapped inside me. Not in rage, but in focus. For years, I'd been biting my tongue, keeping things peaceful. And what did it get me? A threat to take my children away. I stood up, gathered my things, and looked Britney in the eye. This conversation is over. From now on, anything related to custody goes through my lawyer. I walked out with my heart racing. Sat in my car, hands trembling. The idea that they'd try to take my kids from me, it hit me like a punch. But weirdly, I also felt relief. The masks were off. No more pretending, no more guessing their motives. Right there in the parking lot, I made 2 phone calls. One to a top-tier family attorney and the other to Phil, my longtime friend and a digital forensics expert. Over the next month, I shifted into quiet prep mode. On the surface, I kept everything normal. Same visitation, same smiles, same polite greetings. But underneath, I was building my defense. Phil helped me recover every deleted message between Britney and me going back 3 years. I compiled every manipulative text, every financial demand, every veiled threat. I pulled together proof of everything I'd paid for since the divorce. Tuition, health expenses, extracurriculars. I began recording every handoff conversation. It's legal in my state under single-party consent. I collected printed letters Britney had given me, like that absurd rent request. I asked teachers and coaches for written statements verifying my involvement in the kids' education and activities. One moment still sticks with me. I attended Declan's coding competition, quietly sitting in the crowd. Across the room, I spotted Britney and Derek. They hadn't seen me. Derek kept checking his watch, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Declan took the stage and presented a project he'd worked on for weeks. Before the applause even died down, Derek stood up and made for the exit. I caught it all on video. Later, I installed a dash cam that also recorded audio. I caught gems like Derek telling the kids, "Your dad just doesn't get what family really means." And Britney saying, "Maybe Santa will convince your dad to stop being so selfish about camp." When I handed over the mountain of documentation to my attorney, she didn't flinch, just started sorting through it like she'd been waiting for this case. No small talk, no pep talk, just immediate focus. Every receipt, every overstep, she laid out like strategic pieces on a game board. I didn't need to be told I was doing the right thing. I could see it in the way she moved. She knew we had a solid case. While the kids slept, I stayed up into the early hours piecing everything together, scribbling down anything I could recall from past conversations. Sometimes I'd glance at the clock and realize it was nearly 3 a.m. And I had work in a few hours. I was running on empty, but driven by instinct to protect my bond with my children. Of course, I had doubts. Nights where I'd jolt awake wondering if I was overreacting or if this would end up hurting the kids more than helping. But then I'd remind myself I didn't pick this fight. They did. They threatened to take my children. That changes everything. Meanwhile, Britney acted like she'd won. She doubled down, sending me a formal request by email demanding I fork over 8,500 so Lyra could attend a similar camp to keep things fair. I didn't even dignify it with a reply. Straight to the evidence folder it went. Then she started looping her sister and mom into emails, creating a little echo chamber of judgment. They all chimed in about how awful I was for refusing to support all the kids equally. My personal favorite, her mom's message. Any decent father figure would want every child to have equal chances. Shame on you. I quietly forwarded everything to my lawyer. What changed everything was a text from Declan late one night. "Dad, can I come over tomorrow instead of Friday? Mom and Derek are fighting again about money. Derek said, you should man up and help since they're stuck with your kids half the time." Reading that hit me like a truck. Stuck with your kids. Like they were a burden. I took a screenshot even though it crushed me to have to use my son's words as legal ammo. The next day, I picked him up early. Derek said you have a better house because you don't support a real family, he told me. And that you made Lyra cry by not paying for her camp. Does hearing that bother you? I asked gently. He nodded. Makes me feel like we're the problem. But deep down I know we're not. That was the moment everything clicked. I filed to modify the custody agreement. Requested a 7,030th split with court-monitored communication and no direct contact unless through a shared app. Once the papers were delivered, my phone exploded. Texts, calls, even her mother jumping in. I ignored them all. 2 days later, Britney confronted me. This is about the camp, isn't it? I looked her straight in the eye. No, this is about you and Derek dragging our kids into your personal drama because I won't fund your lifestyle. She gave some half-hearted denial. I cut her off. You can explain yourself to the judge. From now on, use the court app or contact my attorney. A week later, Derek tried to start something in the school parking lot. Same tired insults, accusing me of being greedy and litigious. I didn't say a word, just pointed to the dash cam on my windshield. That shut him up real fast. Leading up to the hearing, the atmosphere was tense. Britney suddenly turned into supermom buying gifts, surprising the kids with amusement parks on school nights, letting them stay up way too late. Classic tactic, emotional bribery. I kept my mouth shut and documented everything. At our house, everything stayed consistent. Homework, meals, structure, predictable, calm, the kind of stability kids grow with. My lawyer walked me through what was coming. They're going to paint you as rigid and jealous. Let the documentation speak. Don't react emotionally. 6 weeks later, I was in court, prepared and composed. And the evidence, it spoke volumes. Screenshots, receipts, recordings, even statements from my kids about being guilt. Britney's attorney looked like they'd stepped on a rake. The judge clearly wasn't buying their story, especially after reading the message where Derek said my kids were a burden. Their attempt to label me as uncooperative crumbled. The judge saw straight through it. He ruled that I had no financial responsibility for children that weren't mine and called their tactics manipulative. Final decision. I was granted 70/30 THS custody, court-regulated communication only, and confirmation that I owed nothing for their so-called blended family expenses. They were also ordered to reimburse me for my legal fees, every penny of the $14,380. Walking out of that courtroom didn't feel like victory. It felt like freedom. I wasn't playing their game anymore. Not long after, I bought a home closer to the STEM Academy. Modest, functional, fully ours. I built a tech space for the kids and gave them rooms of their own. That first night, we had pizza on the living room floor, no furniture yet, and stayed up late building PCs and laughing over Minecraft. It was the most peace I'd felt in years. From that point on, everything went through the parenting app. No surprise messages, no sudden emergencies, no guilt bombs. Britney hated it. I slept better than I had in a decade. The kids started to blossom. More laughter, less hesitation. No more walking on eggshells. Zara once asked, "Is it okay if I feel happy here?" I told her, "Always." While they were unpacking, I sent the $14,380 invoice to Britney and Derek's address with a note attached. My responsibility is to my kids, not your lifestyle. Was it petty? Maybe. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Declan and Zara crushed tech camp. Both were invited back as junior mentors. I sent their acceptance letters through the app. No comments, just facts. Now 6 months out, life is finally steady. Declan got into an elite teen coding program. Zara's robotics team is competing nationally. And me? I'm remembering who I am without all the chaos. I even started dating again. She's a teacher, smart, grounded, no games. Our first date felt like breathing fresh air. No family court talk, just real connection. But the moment that made everything worth it. While we were coding together one evening, Declan looked up and said, "I'm glad you stood up to Mom and Derek. Things were getting weird before." That's when I knew this wasn't just survival anymore. This was rebuilding. And this time, no one's draining me dry.